You did what? To whom? On what? Well, did you see a patient on a telemed platform and have a teleconsultation? Today, we're going to talk about some tips on how you can do that. I've divided my presentation into 3 parts. First, choosing a telemedicine platform. What are the considerations? Second, what are some typical steps in a teleconsultation? And lastly, how do we keep it safe for all, for both the patient and the doctor? What I'm going to talk to you about today is all in the UP Medical Informatics Unit guidance documents. We have 5 articles in there, and they are at bit.ly/UPMIU Telemed 2020. So when you're choosing a platform, only you can figure out what is best for you. People often ask me, what do you use? Can you recommend something for me? But really, it's really dependent on the context. How do you intend to incorporate telemedicine into your practice? To what extent and what services will you offer via telemedicine? And how sustainable is the telemedicine practice for you? Is it something that you're only going to do during the pandemic? Then perhaps you shouldn't really invest so much in it. Or is it something that's going to continue in the post-pandemic scenario? And then when you're trying to choose a telemed platform, knowing your context, is it a freemium model, meaning the basic features will be available for free? Do you need those added features, and how willing are you to pay for them? Is it a subscription model? It doesn't matter if you use it once or not at all or many times, but you have to pay a certain monthly fee. Or do they exact service fees? For every patient that you see, the telemed platform will get something like 10 to 20% of your professional fee. And then we worry about the technology. Are you an image-intensive specialty? Would you require special camera or monitoring devices? What kind of microphone should we invest in? The software itself, does it have messaging functions? Because you know, sometimes the Wi-Fi is unreliable. Will it let you shift from a video to audio or just chat? What are the documentation features? Does it have, for example, a note-taking app? Or do you have to open your own EMR and put your documentation in there? How do they store and transmit the data? That is why the last is also about interoperability. If I had my own EMR already, and if I got a telemed platform that has its own EMR, then I will have the problem of reconciling the data between the 2 EMRs. And does it allow for customization? So I know, for example, that some of the telemed platforms have virtual waiting rooms, and you're allowed to put your name on it or add some website to it that links to you, etc. So there are ways to customize. And then very important, we think about security and privacy, because we do have to comply with the Data Privacy Act of 2012. So what are the telemed platform security practices? Where is their data center and what is their infrastructure practice? So I know, for example, that because of the controversy about Zoom before, now that there is a way to specify whether you want your data center in Zoom to be China or elsewhere. Restriction of health information access. Who gets to see the data? Because they are a third party that handles your telemedicine platform. That's why I know that some of them who follow the HIPAA regulation, they ask you to sign business associate agreements. And then disaster recovery measure of health information, especially now. So what happens? Where are the servers? Is it in the cloud? What happens when there's a disaster? Do you lose your data? And then you also think about customer service. Is there technical support for both physician and the patient? So I know of a telemed platform where they have flyers for instruction, not only for the doctors, but also for the patients. And then do they have a content program that offers news and information about the best practices even after launch? So sometimes they will roll out new features and then you wonder about them, and there's a community around the telemed platform, so you can read about their experiences, or you can go to the forum and ask a question if you can't figure out something. Usability, very important. How does it fit in the workflow? So I know of doctors who have 2 screens that are open, because one is going to be for the telemed platform, and then the other one is going to be for the EMR. So is that something that you can handle confidently? Is it too complex to use? So there are certain telemed platforms where there's a separate app for the physician and then a separate app for the patients, and that can sometimes get confusing if they get the wrong app. Is the interface user-friendly? Remember, some of our patients are elderly or they're not so high-tech, so they need the interface to be simple. Are there billing features? So do I ask for my PF separately from the platform, or does the platform do it for me? But if the platform does it for me, when do I get my professional fees? Is it like twice a month on the 15th and the 30th? How does it get transferred to my account, etc.? You have to ask the accountant, do they issue receipts? What happens to the tax, etc.? So the next would be the steps in the teleconsultation. What are the sequence of events? So first, you need to set up. So what are the minimum requirements to set up for telemedicine? Well, you need a communication device. And it can be the landline, it can be a mobile phone with or without camera, and a computer. And of course, if you're using video or chat software, you need to have a stable internet connection, or else you're gonna end up shopping. A private, well-lit location is preferred, especially if you're gonna have a video consult. So how fast should your internet be? A minimum of 2 Mbps per user so that you can get HD 720p video at 30 frames per second. You need a private, quiet, well-lit room. You need to have a comfortable seat, especially if you're gonna see patients for a long time. At least when we're in the clinic, we usually stand up, right, in between, because we're gonna do like a physical exam. You need a secure table platform, because if you're like me, my laptop is perched on a bunch of books so that I will be at eye level with its camera. So sometimes, you know, it might fall. So we want a secure table platform. White light, not incandescent. We certainly do not want yellow light, especially for the patients, because they may appear jaundiced even when they're not. A single color background, and if you're gonna paint the wall where you're gonna have your teleconsults, they were saying it should be light blue, flat latex paint so that there's no glare. And try to eliminate echo. Are you gonna wear your white coat? Well, some of our patients prefer that, but keep in mind that white coats and light colors can increase reflection in there. Even now you can see that there's a reflection of my laptop on my glasses, for example. Angle and vantage point might emphasize bad posture or fidgeting, so please be aware that you are on camera. Look at the patient so that you might need to disable the picture-in-picture. So right now I'm using Zoom to record, and if I look at my picture, I will not be looking at the camera. So if this were a teleconsult, I would not be looking at the patient, so the patient might feel that I'm not concentrating. You may or may not wear headsets for privacy. The recommendation is, if you can, do not wear headsets so that we mimic the usual face-to-face encounter in the clinic. But for some, it might be impossible. We need to ensure privacy, so we don't want the conversation to be heard, so maybe we need to wear the headphones. Now, before the teleconsultation, I've already talked to you about the setup, the technical and room requirements, but we also need to select the patient, because remember, we cannot see emergencies via teleconsultations. And for your particular specialty, you might need to decide which sort of patients are appropriate. You need to prepare previous records, because documentation is important. As a personal experience, I could not access my electronic medical records from the house. They would not allow me, even through a VPN. So I had problems about my records. You have to check the connection. In telemedicine setups elsewhere, a nurse or the secretary actually schedules a tech rehearsal with the patient. So they call up the patient maybe a few days before and check the audio, the video connection, etc. But also when you log in, you need to do that again. So you have to ask the patient, can you hear me well? Can you see me well? Before you launch into the actual consultation proper. If there are other people in the room, you have to give introductions. So if there's someone with the patient and you don't know who they are, or if there's someone with you, maybe a resident assisting, for example, you need to have introductions. And of course, you need to secure consent. And I will show you later our template from the medical informatics unit. During the consultation, you need to determine the agenda, because you need to agree on what will be discussed. Because we have a limited time, and you know that the Wi-Fi might go off or out anytime. So we really need to schedule. For my particular clinic practice, the patients are informed that patients are scheduled at 30-minute blocks, and that they have to log in 15 minutes before. And I do ask them to come up with their 3 questions that they want to be discussed during the teleconsultation. You have to explain the process, what is needed for diagnosis and treatment, because there are limitations. So for example, while doing the history and PE, I think it will just be a typical diabetes follow-up, and then the patient suddenly says, I have abdominal pain, but I cannot examine the abdomen through the webcam. So I'll have to explain to the patient what we're going to do about that. So either I'm going to refer the patient for an actual face-to-face consult, or we'll do a laboratory exam, etc. It's also important to get patient feedback during the consultation. So check in. Was that clear? That wasn't choppy? Did you get that? Because sometimes you get choppy, but they're too polite to let you know that they lost some part of the conversation. After the teleconsult, please summarize for the patient. So there will be opportunities for clarifications, as I said, because there may have been some technical glitches. You have to explain the plan, including like what lab requests they need to do next and what are the prescriptions. Arrange your follow-up and give instructions. What are the red flags? If you feel this or see this, you might need to go to the ER. Our face-to-face consult will be delayed because of the pandemic, but we can do another teleconsultation at so-and-so month, and I need you to do the following labs. And then end the visit by thanking the patient and eliciting feedback. So is this something you want to do again? Because we don't know when the pandemic is going to end. So if I follow up at 3 months and it's still like this, will that be okay? So surprisingly, the younger patients prefer telemedicine or teleconsultations, but the older patients, even though they say it's convenient, they prefer still the face-to-face. I don't know how it's going to be for your practice. After the teleconsultation, well, you're not done yet, because if you're like me, you need to complete the documentation because it's hard to be typing while seeing the patient. So generally, I just type short phrases or words, and then I complete my documentation after I've said goodbye to the patient. And then I email them a summary and the prescription. And some people prefer to use password protection for their emails. I know that Gmail allows you to password protect. So how do we keep the teleconsultation safe for all, both the patient and the physician? So first, when we go into a teleconsultation, we have to verify identity because a teleconsultation cannot be done anonymously. It's easy when you have video and it's an old patient, right? But what if it's only chat? Or even if it's an audio call? How do I know that I'm talking to the right person? And more so for the patient, how does he or she know that he's really talking to a real doctor and not someone pretending to be a doctor? To protect confidentiality, we must obtain informed consent, and that is in compliance with the Data Privacy Act of 2012. And it has to be evidenced by written, electronic, or recorded means because implied consent is not recognized by the National Privacy Commission. And so the consent must be freely given, specific, and informed indication of will, whereby the data subject agrees to the collection and processing of personal information. And we have a consent template at the UP Medical Informatics Unit link that I have shown here, both in Filipino and in English. One feedback we have received is that it is too long because it is 3 pages. But the reason why it's very long is because it has the following parts: the introduction and purpose, the nature of the telemedicine consultation, the benefits, the potential risks, data privacy and confidentiality issues, and the rights and limitations. And this is just a partial screenshot because, as I said, it's 3 pages long. If you will record the teleconsultation, and I strongly advise you not to, there's a separate consent form. And why do I strongly advise you not to record the teleconsultation? Well, because it will be just like the data we have in the EMR or in the paper hospital charts, where you have to protect the data for at least 15 years, diba? Do not destroy the data. And then if there's a data breach, then you will be responsible for that. That's why it says here, I will do my best to keep it safe from theft, corruption, loss, illegal use, or sharing on social media. So we do have a sample documentation template. So why do we say this is a safe practice? Well, beyond what we usually write in our electronic medical records, there are some things that are specific to teleconsultation. So the reason why it's a teleconsultation, so we'll say, well, there's a quarantine, the patient cannot come to the clinic, that's why we're having a teleconsultation instead. Document that consent has been gotten. Where am I seeing the patient from? Where is the patient? What are the limitations of the visit, if any? So the example I gave earlier was not being able to do an abdominal exam. The other limitation might be technological, like for example, in the middle, the Wi-Fi became so bad that I had to shift from video to audio, or I had to shift from audio to chat, and that's why, you know, we were not able to do some things. You may have to write not only the date and time, but also the duration of the teleconsultation. We don't know when or if the PhilHealth will reimburse teleconsultations, but abroad, the model has been, they reimburse according to the duration. So I think we need to put that there. And then the attendees present, were their caregiver, relatives present. So, you know, just in case there's a question that arises later on, we know who was there and who can serve as witness to what actually transpired in the teleconsultation. We need to encourage feedback and monitor outcomes because we're all new to this. Is it something that the patient might want to do again? Is there ease in scheduling of appointments? Is the teleconsultation feasible or convenient? How satisfied is the patient with the service? And even beyond that, maybe clinical outcomes. Was it safe to have deferred the face-to-face and have done a teleconsultation? Was it better overall? And then we have the e-prescription, and it's so good that the FDA issued a circular, but then it's only during the time of the pandemic. So we're hoping that if telemedicine will continue in the post-pandemic scenario, they will have more enduring legislation about this. But basically in that circular, they said the e-prescription is optical electronic data, which is the same as the prescription and can be sent online, okay? Please keep a copy of the e-prescription in the patient's medical records. So why do we send a teleconsultation summary? And I mentioned it here as a safety feature. Why? Because for transparency, it allows for the correction of discrepancies and misinterpretation. So you can clearly say, this is what I told you, and I sent it to you, and you didn't ask any questions or clarifications. So I assume that you understood it, right? It will be an opportunity if the patient does have questions. Oh, but doctor, I thought you said that the dose will not be the same, it will increase. However, in your notes, you said continue the same. So now I'm confused. What do I need to do? So it's really that. That's the safety part, allowing for correction of discrepancies and misinterpretation. And then helpful reminders like, when do we need the test to be done? Where are the referrals? Does the patient need to go see another doctor, etc.? That's the end of my presentation. Very short, but I hope very impactful and helpful to you as well. If you'd like to contact me, I'm on Twitter and there's my email. And again, to share the link to the Medical Informatics Unit guidance documents on telemedicine, it's bit.ly/UPMIU Telemed 2020. Thank you.